and welcome back to my channel for this video, which is going to be all about the process of me transforming this chair that I'm sitting on now into something a little bit more finished and a lot more stupid. So let me start by pulling this chair out so you can actually see what I'm talking about. Here it is. Now, if you've watched my bedroom makeover video, which is actually the first proper video that I have up on this channel, you may recognise this chair because it does live here in my bedroom, tucked neatly away underneath my dressing table. And you will find me sitting on it every day of the week as I do my skincare, my hair and my makeup badly, and it very much does the job of facilitating the doing of those things. This chair was actually one of the first things I bought when I moved into this flat 5 years ago because I really liked the shape of it, and it was also really cheap in the charity shop, which is always a selling point for me. When I first bought it, it was a mixture of a wickery kind of woven back and seat with metal arms and legs, and it was pretty old, so the original, what I assume was a creamy colour, I'd gotten all chipped and faded to kind of a manky yellowy off-white. And in that bedroom makeover video, you would have seen me kind of impulsively decide to transform this chair from its previous form into its current state. I was trying to do kind of a colour drenched effect in that dressing table alcove, and I bought a big tin of this pinky nude emulsion paint, which I slapped onto all of the walls, the shelving, the IKEA drawer units, and even onto the floor. I hadn't originally planned to also paint this chair, but partway through the process I realised that how it was looking was kind of ruining the effect that I was going for, and I decided that it would look much better if I could get it painted in the same colour to match. I wasn't sure how to change the colour of it though using the same paint that I'd already bought because it was an emulsion, so it wouldn't have worked on the metal and the wicker. So my solution at the time, using my newfound paper mache obsession, was to cover this in paper and then paint on top of that. And I would say it worked out pretty well for an early paper mache attempt. After a couple of years of use, however, we do now have some visible damage. There's some marking on the leg here, as well as a few other places, a few little rips, and we also have this big rip along the base of the seat, which isn't really surprising because at the time I did this, being new to paper mache, it didn't occur to me to try and smooth out the wicker surface first with a pulpy kind of loo roll mixture, which is what I would do now if I was to redo this same project again. I just covered the whole thing in flat sheets of newspaper, which are obviously going to be prone to ripping when there's no support underneath and I'm putting my whole body weight on it every day. That issue aside though, this has mostly held up well. And while I could just patch up these few bits of breakage, paint over them and call it a day, that's no fun. So I'm going to do something else instead. So here's the plan. Firstly, I intend to resurface this whole thing with some loo roll paper mache to create a smoother shape overall. It will get rid of all of these little lines that you see where the newspaper pieces overlap, and will also strengthen and solidify the whole surface to avoid future ripping. At this point in my paper mache journey, I've also just realised that this is my preferred finish for paper mache pieces. The loo roll gives a slightly textured finish, which I just personally prefer. I'll be painting this whole thing in a similar colour to what it is now so that it will still work with my colour drenched bedroom alcove, and then I will be adding some silly, unnecessary details to elevate and delight. If you've been watching my channel for a while now, you'll know that I have been trying to ham-fist a leg-based project into one of these videos for quite some time, but for a variety of different reasons that just hasn't come to fruition. And I think finally in this project I have found an appropriate place for it, because chairs already have legs, so what could be more appropriate? I really like the idea of riffing off of antique footed furniture, which is something that I'm sure you'll recognise if you're into furniture design. This type of thing was particularly popular in the 18th century when lots of pieces were finished with animal-like feet at their bases. In most of these cases, the feet that you'll see will either be cat-like paws or maybe a birdish talon wrapped around a ball. Those were the most popular types of designs, and this is actually something I have a lot of nostalgia for because I remember my grandparents parents having a lot of footed furniture in their house when I was growing up. In my case though, we're not doing paws or claws, we are doing heels. So each of the 4 feet will be finished with a little granny-like shoe at the base, which I'm thinking will be cute and stand out more if I do them in a contrasting colour like red. Then I want to finish the chair with a padded cushion for comfort and a cover for protection, which is going to take the form of a little sundress. And we're also going to lean into granny kind of styling for this, so I'm thinking a faded 80s floral pattern maybe. And that is the entire plan. Do we see the vision? Are we on board? I know that it's a little bit mad, but I am very, very excited about it. And now we can finally get going on making. I'm going to start off, I think, by sculpting the shapes of the shoes on the bottoms of each of these feet, because those need to be in place before we paper mache. And I am going to do this sat on my bed. Firstly, because it's comfy, and secondly, because Sunday has already claimed my art room chair today. So I'm going to allow her to stay sleeping in there and I can work in here, because we're not doing anything sticky at this point. Let's get going. So I put a board down so that this is on a flat surface, because obviously I want these shoes to sit flat on the floor. Looking at this now, I'm realising that we're going to have a slight issue with the angles of these legs, because these back ones do angle out a little bit, which I think will work well to have a heel coming off of. The legs themselves are going to be the heel of the shoe. These ones angle forwards, which I don't know if that's going to be a problem. I'm just going to play around with some cardboard, some masking tape, to try and get the shapes to a place where I like them. And I think this is going to be a little bit of trial and error, because this is kind of a novelty, silly idea. I think the execution being decent is important, so it doesn't end up looking too hokey and shit. That's always the risk with my projects. Let's just see how it goes. As ever with the starting points of my paper mache projects, this is going to look pretty shitty, but I'm just trying to get the basic shape in there that I can then mould and add to with paper mache. I'm using some of this ripped up brown paper to add mass, and then pieces of cardboard around the outside so that it's got somewhat of a strong shell. At the moment this looks more like a witch's boot than anything else, but we'll see how we go. I'm not saying this looks good, but I'm happy with the general size and shape of it. Maybe it needs a little bit of mass at the back to mimic the shape of a heel. I add a little knobble there. Okay, so this is kind of the shape I'm going for. I've just done this 1 foot here, and I think this is about the right size in relation to the girth of the legs. It obviously doesn't look great right now, and the painting is going to do a lot of the heavy lifting on this. So I'm going to try and copy this one on these other 3 legs, and then we'll take a look and I think start on the first paper mache just over these feet, because these are the most important element of the whole thing. It's already relatively sturdy, to be honest, but obviously at this point I could easily just snap this off if I wanted to. So I do have to make sure that once I go with the paper mache, it's going to be really firmly on there. But I think I'm happy with this, and I'm going to carry on. Also, if anyone wanted an update from my previous video where I made, can't even bloody see it, my faux stained glass panel, you can see here that the rainbowy effect coming through does indeed work. On a sunny day like today, it's actually really, really nice getting all these colours into the room. They're lighting up Sunday's bed like a little rainbow. It's well hot today, actually. I'm bloody boiling. I've had the windows closed so I could film without car noise, but I'm gonna have to reopen and let some air in. Moved on to the floor because it really does benefit me to have a flat surface underfoot. Under these multiple feet. Beginnings of the second foot, I use a little bit of like packing polystyrene in the middle of this one, and I just need to figure out how it's going on here. It's actually harder than I thought it would be to get a good shape on these. 1 shoe, 2 shoe. Sunday's finally woken from her nap, so I've been able to move on to my desk, which for this project is much more practical. The angles of the legs do make them a little bit different front and back, but I actually think it's not as obvious as what I was originally imagining. And I think I've managed to get the shape of the feet from the front decent as well. And now I can just move on to the last 2 feet. Let's spin it around and get to shaping. This foot building exercise is taking longer than I anticipated, and I am sweating. Because it's so warm, it's making the masking tape not stick properly. It's like peeling up, which is why I think it's important to get at least 1 layer of paper mâché over these shoes today. Just kind of mashing it into shape. Okay, another one done, 1 more left. And we're done. We've got 4 little shoes now on the bottom of this chair, and I've tried my best to make them as evenly shaped and sized as possible. They're obviously not perfectly identical, but then again, neither are the 2 of my feet, so I think we'll get away with it. Now what I'm going to do is just do 1 layer of the paper mâché over the tops of these shoes, and I might as well go up the legs a little bit, and then I'm going to call it a day for today. So let me go away, get some glue, get some paper, and we can get to sticking. Mix some water in with this. I'm just going to slap this on pretty roughly because this is just the first coat to secure the shape in a little bit more. I don't want all of this masking tape peeling off and it getting ruined. Good amount of glue onto the paper. Shove it down over the shape. This is probably going to take a couple of hours maybe to cover these. It always looks worse before it starts looking better. Just gotta trust the process. I feel like a broken record a little bit when I make these videos because a lot of the time, even though I'm doing different projects, I'm doing the same processes over and over again. So I kind of run out of things to say about it that I haven't already said a million times before. It's just gluing paper over and over and over again. So that's what I'm gonna spend the next hour or so doing. 1 done, on to the next. Second foot done, on to the third. Third foot done, 1 more to go. And 4th leg done. That is all I'm going to get done today because I am tired and I am sweaty as hell. But I actually think it's looking kind of cute. The shape of the feet has turned out quite nicely, I think. I obviously need to do a second coat over all of it and also flip it over so I can do the undersides of the feet. But for a first day's work, I'm happy and I will see you to continue tomorrow. It's the next day and I have returned to carry on with the paper mache on my chair. The layer that I did over the legs are now fully dry because that was only a really thin surface layer, but the feet themselves are still a little bit wet and tacky. So I definitely don't want to be flipping it over and doing the base of them, and I don't want to do a second coat on these yet. So today I think what I'm going to do is put this down on the floor and just finish covering all of these arms and the top part of the seat with my loo roll. So first thing I'm going to do today is fill in this crack. I'm going to do that with just some wet pulpy loo roll, shove it in there, and then finish surfacing this whole back piece. I was originally thinking that I was going to spend quite a lot of time filling in these rib sections, but thinking about it now, this whole bit is going to be covered with my dress cover thing. So do I need to spend all that time doing that? Probably really not. So I'm just going to smooth it out as best I can and focus more on filling in these ribs on the arms where you're actually going to see them, because that seems like a better use of time. I'm hoping that once this is dry and once it's got another coat on top of it, it's going to be much more solid and it isn't going to rip again in the future. It is also obviously going to have a cushion and a cover on top of it, which will protect it even more. So I'm feeling cautiously confident, and I will update you again once I've got all of this seat and all of this back panel covered. Front section, first layer is done and it's looking as you would expect, a little bit loo rolly. And now I'm going to move on to the back and cover all of this nonsense. It's a few days later and I have been slowly chipping away at the paper mache on this, and now the whole thing is covered 360. Our feet are nicely formed, the rips are all gone, and the whole thing is feeling much more solid and sturdy now. I also got rid of all the ridges on these bits, and I just have a few more extra paper mache details to add today. I want to smooth out this section here so that there's not this obvious lip going into this, because this bit of the arm is going to be visible, so I think that's important. Before and after. A much smoother finish, don't we think? And then I want to add some detail to the shoes to really define the shape of where the foot ends and the shoe starts. Okay, a few hours later and I am done. The arms are now looking much smoother and we've got 4 little shoes on each of our chair legs. It was a bit tricky to get all of the shoes looking even, but I think I did a semi-decent job at least. And I'm going to come back tomorrow and do a little bit of patching up over those with a final coat of paper mache, but I'm not going to bother filming that. So I will see you next in a couple of days time when this is ready to be sanded and painted. So I'll catch you then. It's sanding time. This guy is now almost fully dry with the exception of an area on this shoe which I had to patch up a little bit yesterday. So I'm going to be sanding around it today and just doing everything else apart from it. I've got some sheets of 120 grit sandpaper here, which is about the right weight to smooth out the surface on this slightly without ruining it, hopefully. And as ever with my paper mache projects, I'm not going for a perfectly smooth finish, otherwise doing the whole loo roll thing would be redundant. I just use this to smooth out the bigger, rougher lumps and bumps. So I'm going to go over it a couple of times until I'm happy with the level of sanding that has been completed. And while I sand, I thought I might pop my Pinterest board for this project up on the screen, just because I don't often make a Pinterest board for a project, and I did this time, and there's some cool things on there that you might want to see. So have a little peruse at that and I'll crack on. As evidenced by my board here, I am far from the first person who's ever thought to stick some feet at the base of some chair legs. This was one of the first pieces that I came across, and I love the relative simplicity of this design and the fact that the maker kept the back of the chair looking very normal and just focused on the legs and fabric-esque effect at the front. Also, this one gets bonus points for the mysterious grazed knees too, which are an interesting touch, I think. I also really love this one, which feels quite bold in comparison to the first one, the body language on which I read as quite timid. I like that it has an integrated boob-like design on the front. Arguably it also looks like more of a comfortable and functional chair too, which I guess is important if you do intend to sit on it. Admittedly, not all of the chairs that I pinned are my personal taste, but that's not really what I find Pinterest to be good for. When I'm making, I try my best not to just copy other people's ideas, but once I've come up with a theme that I want to work around, around. I do find it interesting and motivating to do some online research just to see how different people have interpreted a similar concept in their own unique ways. I found quite a few examples of tables with human-like legs as well, which could potentially be a future project idea for me. And I was looking at other ways that designers have integrated body parts into their furniture pieces as well. Arms, hands, faces, even a tongue, which on this piece looks very appealingly tactile to me. I do really want to sit on this chair. I just wish that it didn't have the eyes at the back. They ruin it a bit for me. I actually found that I was most drawn to the pieces which have taken a slightly less is more approach, and that integrate these unusual elements into the piece in quite a simple, uncomplicated way. This chair is actually one of the first paper mache pieces that I ever saw online that made me want to play around with the medium myself, and I don't know if the back on this is supposed to look like a deconstructed face, but that is how it reads to me, so I included it here as well. I pinned a few examples of chairs wearing clothing items to give me some ideas for the dress cover that I'll be making for this piece, and I was also looking at standard 1980s style skirted chairs for inspiration for that too. And that's my Pinterest board. I hope you enjoyed. Sanding completed, and now it is time to paint. Luckily I do have some of the pink paint left that I originally used in the alcove and on this chair before, so I just need to slap that on all over it except for the shoes. Gonna be using this brush. Don't come for me in the comments. People always get so triggered that I don't use bigger brushes, but I use the brushes that I prefer using because this is my pastime at the end of the day, and the most important part of it is that I enjoy what I'm doing. So the large size fan brush is the one. It is a bit funny how much work has already gone into this to be making it look almost identical to how it looked before. Some may call some of these steps a waste of time, which honestly would be valid, but I do think that the loo roll has added an extra layer of protection and strength to this, which is what I wanted. Oh yeah. The paint fills in some of the little cracks and ridges left by the loo roll, and every layer just smooths it out that slight bit more, and it goes on really well and is very satisfying. I keep trying to think of insightful things that I can say to camera while I'm doing this project, but my brain is a little bit void of thinking at the moment, and a lot of the time when I'm making, I just like to exist in silence in my own head. Although saying that, I am currently watching a reaction video on YouTube to the new series of Love is Blind UK, so it's not exactly me being introspective. It's just me switching my brain off for dumber and funner things. First layer of paint is done and I'm happy enough with how it's looking. Like I said, it basically looks exactly the same as it did at the start of this process, minus some rips, plus some texture, plus some shoes, which is what we were going for. I'm going to do another full coat of the pink over this just to make sure it's got a nice even finish. Then I think this shoe should be fully dry, so I'll be able to mix up a nice red colour and paint our footwear. It's a little bit fiddly to do, so I'm going slow and steady with it. I think that it's really making the rest of this chair pop, having this little bit of bright colour at the base. And while I've been doing it, I've been wondering why I've never made anything shoe related before, and thinking about those chairs that were really popular in the noughties, the like recliner leopard print chairs that would pop up in different TV shows and things. Stuff like that and stuff like this, I think, is always trying to bridge the gap between hideous and fabulous, and you can either choose to go with it or you can choose to hate it. Me personally, I love a stupid element in design, and I'm thinking these are not the last paper mache shoes I'm ever gonna paint because this is way too fun. Once I'm done painting these, I think I need to leave the whole thing to dry for at least an hour before I do my sealing coat of Mod Podge over everything. And I've been turning my brain onto thinking thinking about the dress cover that I'm going to make for this. I have been keeping an eye out in the charity shops for some appropriate second-hand fabric, but I haven't stumbled across anything that I particularly like. So I'm thinking once I've done this coat on these shoes, I'm going to walk down to town quickly and pop into my local independent fabric shop and see if I can find a fabric that speaks to me. So that's the plan. Finish painting these, pop to the shops, seal and coat on this, and then tomorrow we'll be all set to start making the dress. Here we have the finished, painted and sealed chair base, and now that it's got that Mod Podge coating on it, it's got a lovely glossy surface shimmer, which always helps to make these paper mache projects feel a lot more finished. The shoes, I think, have turned out really nicely, and they're actually very strong. It would take a fair bit of effort to snap these off, which is a good thing because I don't want to be losing any toes in the rest of this procedure. And now this is done, it is time to tart it up with a lovely dress. And I did have a quick head start on this the other day, making the cushion padded seat for it. I had some foam left over from the footstool project that I did for my living room, so I cut out 2 pieces of that, one for the base and one for the back panel. For the back panel, I actually decided to cut a V shape into the very top of it because I know that the dress I want to make for this is going to be a kind of collared dress. So I thought it would be nice if there was a bit of space left at the top of this chair that you could see the V shape through. When I was cutting the foam, as well as cutting obviously straight lines to the shape, I also made sure to trim off around the edges so that they have a kind of rounded edge and they're not looking quite so blocky. And then sewed those together, sewed some fleecy fabric around the whole thing so that it's nicely tucked in and the foam isn't going to shed or move around. And here is that finished padded seat cushion now, and it goes on there like so. I have obviously tested this out and it's actually very comfortable, so I'm pleased with it so far. And now we're going to be covering this up with the actual dress, and I'm going to be starting by doing a layer of this with some calico fabric, partly because this will obviously help me to figure out the pattern pieces that I need to cut without cutting into the main fabric I'm going to be using, and I think having it double layered will make the fabric cover a bit stronger and more resilient. So I did actually also start on this the other day as well by cutting out a little bit of my calico and starting on the pinning. This is as far as I got with that. Doesn't look very finished at present because obviously it's not, but I think this is a wise way to do it. Cut out all the pieces I need in the calico, pin them together, make sure it's all going to fit and flow nicely before I cut into my real fabric. And I can show you the fabric I'm going to be using now, which I did actually go a little bit spendy on, much more so than I'd anticipated, because after looking in 3 fabric shops, I couldn't find a floral that I really liked for this. And then I came across this fabric, which obviously is not a floral, but is a really nice cotton woven linen in this beautiful multicolored check, which still has a kind of vintagey 80s vibe if I sew it into a little sundress. But it's obviously a slightly different direction than what I intended to go for. The reason why I thought this one would work so well is because it has this peachy colour in it, which matches quite nicely with the chair base, and it also has a red running through it as well to tie in the shoes. So I just thought it was perfect, and I got a metre of this, and for a metre it was £30, which, like I said, is expensive. However, it just was the best option I could find, and I could really picture this chair coming together with this fabric, so I splurged. Will not be cutting into this until I am certain that I know what I'm doing, because I only have a metre of it, which is a little bit tight for what I'm doing, and I do not want to waste any of my expensive cotton. So I'm going to carry on now figuring out what I'm doing with the calico. I've never made a dress either for myself or for a chair before, so this should be a fun learning experience, and I'm just going to be cutting, pinning, standing back and looking at it until it feels like the sundress that this chair deserves. Let's crack on. Trying to decide how long I want this skirt to be. I think it doesn't want to be too long because this isn't too tall of a chair. Little little mini skirt for my old lady. I feel like that's about right. It's got some pleats in it to give it some movement. I've been toying with whether or not I think that this cover should be removable. It obviously would be good if I could remove it so that I could stick it in the wash, but I think it's going to be hard for me to do sleeves if it's going to be a removable cover, because there's obviously no way to get them off these arms. So I could do a little sleeveless number that ties at the sides or at the back. Or if I do sleeves, maybe they could have a Velcro strip on the underside. As with most of the things that I make, because I do spend so long putting them together, I do want them to last a long time, and having it be washable is obviously going to facilitate that. So as I go on, I'm going to see whether or not that's going to be doable. I guess fully upholstered chairs and sofas and things don't usually have removable covers. I'll get the skirt done first before I think more about that. I'm splitting this skirt into 3 panels so that it goes around these legs here, because I want them to be fully visible and not covered with the fabric here, because I think it will ruin the line of the chair. Okay, skirt is pinned at front and on the sides. Obviously the length is going to go up a little bit once it gets hemmed. I think that I'm happy with that. It looks kind of cute, goes nicely with my shoes. And now I need to figure out what I'm doing with this top. To sleeve or not to sleeve, that is the question. First thing I can do, I guess, is to cut into this top panel to reveal our V neckline. Then I can figure out how it's going to attach to the back and add a skirt panel at the back as well, because at the moment her arse is fully exposed and that just won't do. So neckline ends there. So if I just cut a straight line down here, so it will be something like that. It does look nice as a sleeveless dress, but I didn't plan for this, which is why I left this part of the arm thinner than this part. If I knew it was going to be sleeveless, I would have tried to bulk that up a bit. Doesn't matter too much, but I think I want to have a go at seeing how I could attach sleeves. Gonna fuck around with it for a while longer, then report back, because I think this is going to be a little bit of trial and error to get it pinned correctly. Pinning around the sides is proving to be very tricky to keep the shape, and I keep getting bunches that I don't want going from seat to back, which I guess is just kind of always going to happen. It's not going to lay perfectly straight, especially because I'm going to be on and off sitting on it. So maybe I need to get over that a little bit, and I'm still trying to figure out at what places this will be fastened. Maybe I should do a straight cut along the back and have a Velcro strip there so that it can be put on and off that way. It's all just very fiddly and a bit confusing, to be honest. The good thing about calico though is that it's a pretty sculptable fabric and it's very stiff, so you can manipulate it quite well as long as you're not working against the grain. And I'm just trying to remind myself to enjoy what I'm doing and appreciate the fun of problem solving in this way without getting hung up on the imperfections. The main dress portion of this is now fully pinned in the calico. Ignore the fact that it's kind of messy. And I have now made the executive decision to not do sleeves, because I tried pinning them in various ways and I just couldn't get them to sit right with the bend of this arm. And like I said, they were going to make making this into a removable cover way too complicated. So what I'm going to do instead to make this removable is have this back panel split into 2 pieces with a long Velcro strip going down the full length of it, and these 2 straps are gonna button or Velcro at the back as well, so then the whole thing will be able to be lifted off, washed and put back on. Then I'm thinking to finish this off at the neckline and add a little bit of detail around the top since we're not having sleeves. I'm gonna go for a kind of sailor style collar that will sit something like this at the front and then hang down at the back, and that is also kind of a 1980s-ish detailing because you see a lot of those in Laura Ashley style dresses. And now the tricky part comes, because I have to take each of these pieces off here, cover them all in my outer fabric, sew them all together and put it back on. So I think before I remove it, what I'll do is pencil lines around where each of the seams are going to go and also mark what each of the pieces are so that I don't lose track of what goes where. There's probably going to need to be some adjustments when I put it back on because I'm not perfect at any of this, but but I do think that it's really sweet, and if I can pull this off in the final fabric, I'm gonna be pretty chuffed with myself. Each piece has been penciled and now I unpin. I hope I can reassemble this properly. Okay, here are our pieces freshly off the chair. I'm just gonna go around and trim off any of the excess that I don't need, because some of them do have a lot that I folded around the back. Gonna leave a good seam allowance just in case of error, because I know what I'm like. All of the panels are cut out, and now I need to cut into the actual fabric, which is the scary bit because we can only cut once. I'm pretty sure, looking at these all together, I am going to have enough fabric to do this. I will need some extra as well for the collar because I'm going to do that last. Let's just lay this on top. Also, I'm conscious that this is a check, so I do want the checks going in the right direction. I am not gonna faff around trying to line up the print so that the checks go into each other perfectly. I won't be able to do that with this much fabric, but I do want them all to be straight on. So if I lay this all out and then cut, I think that's the safest way. Not rushing this bit I think is important because this is one of the most crucial parts of it. I actually realised that I needed to rejig these slightly while I was pinning because I want all of the skirt panels to start at the same colour on our checked pattern. So now it looks like this, which isn't quite as satisfyingly fabric saving. I'm going to end up with kind of weird shaped leftovers, but they'll still do for the collar and everything. And now I can get to snipping. This is such beautiful fabric. I'm really excited to have it in my bedroom. I think it's going to look really nice against all the other colours that I have in there. First piece cut. Okay, done. Panel pieces, leftover fabric. Now I'm going to pin all of the pieces with the double layer of fabric back onto the chair to make sure that they all fit perfectly. I think I'll start sewing them together while they're on the chair, again, just to make sure that the fit is good. Then I can take them all off and do the finishing stitches to make sure that they're all really firm and secure. So far, I've just got this main back panel on here, and I think it's looking lovely. So I'll spend the next 30 minutes pinning again, and then report back. We are all repinned. Here's a little 360. So it does all fit together very well, and it looks much nicer in this lovely checkered pattern. I now have to sew this together, which I think is going to be quite a long task. And I'm trying to think what the best way is to do this. I'm going to be hand sewing it so that I can do as much as possible of it while it's still on the chair so that I don't lose the shape. I think I'm going to start by sewing this front ruffle all around the inside of the chair seat because that's relatively easy to do while it's still on there. And like I said, I think this is going to be a very slow procedure. It's already 4:30 and I started this morning at 10 o'clock. Can't really believe how long this has taken me, but seeing it come together, I do think it is going to be worth all of this effort. Let me pick out an appropriate thread to use. I might use this light tan brown because I have enough of it to do the whole thing, and this is a stronger thread. So let me get to stitching. Doubling up my thread for strength. Obviously I've pinned this on the top, not actually where I'm stitching, so it's probably going to take even longer than it would have otherwise, and I'm going to be constantly flipping it back and forth to make sure that I haven't messed up. I'm pretty sure my mum had a dress that looked a bit like this in the 90s. There's something that's feeling nostalgic about it to me, or maybe I'm just thinking about Elma. Either way, it does feel homey. I've always loved working with textiles and hand sewing, and I like mixing textiles in with other mediums just to soften out those harder shapes and add a kind of feminine element to them. I haven't actually ironed any of this as I've been going, which usually I would say is a major faux pas, but I haven't really felt like it's particularly needed it. I will be giving all of the seams a good iron before I finish it, but for this part it's fine. An hour and a half later and I have done this section and this section, and it is looking pretty good if I do say so myself. Sunday's out there impatiently waiting for her dinner. dinner, so I had better stop for the day, feed her, and then I'll come back to you tomorrow to hopefully finish up this project. It's the next day and it's actually already mid-afternoon and I've been just doing other things today. I haven't got much done on my dress yet. Had to go to the doctor's to get something done. And now I'm back and I'm feeling less confident that I'm going to actually finish this today, especially because this arm is now in some pain. So I'm probably going to be sewing a little bit slower than I normally do. All of the skirt panels are now sewn on around the top seam here, although I will have to go over all of these seams again back the other way and also clean up the undersides. I can do that once I take the cover off of the chair. For now, I'm just going to carry on and slowly sew the bits I can do, starting with these side seams here, get these skirt panels sewn on, and we'll just see how far we get today. My back is not going to thank me for this later. It's coming along slow and steady, and I'm actually a bit jealous of this chair because this dress is really fucking cute. I would wear this. Also, it is quite handy, to be honest, to be using checked fabric, because when you're using anything with lines or a grid in it, you can really easily follow the pattern of that for your stitches so that you can get them as straight as possible. I don't know how interesting it's going to be to just watch me really slowly and stitch all of these seams. So I think let's fast forward ahead to when all of these main seams are sewn and we can move on to next steps. Another new day, and we are starting early today because I'm very hopeful that we can actually finally finish this project. Now all of the main structural seams are sewn at least once. I'm going to take this off the chair and I'm going to tidy up all of these inside seams, go over all of the stitches again so that it's nice and strong, and do any trimming down that I need. Then I will be back on camera in a few hours time, and hopefully at that point all that will be left is doing the bottom hem and the collar. Here's how it looks. The back currently is a bit of a mess, but it will not be the next time you see it. So remember how yesterday I said this? We can actually finally finish this project. Well, that clearly turned out to be a lie, since it is already the next day and this is still not finished. I actually sewed for basically 12 hours straight yesterday, finishing up all of these inner seams. I was trying to do them really nicely and securely because, like I said, making this a removable cover is so that it will be able to be washed, and if it wasn't well sewn it would not last in the washing machine anyway. So I spent my time and did it right. If you want to see how it looks on me, here it is. Pretty glamorous. We are up to the point where I said I would be about mid-afternoon yesterday, and now all that needs doing is the hemming on the bottom, adding the collar, and then doing the fixtures. And I'm loath to say again that I'm going to finish this today because I feel like every time I say that I'm proven wrong, and it's very upsetting to me. So we're just going to carry on and see how much we can get done today, starting with these bottom seams because that's the easiest job, and it'll also mean that we get rid of all of these loose threads that are slowly being pulled and shedding as I work. So that will be good. Let's pop it back on the chair and see how it's looking. I was taking it on and off a bit yesterday just to make sure as I was sewing things down that I wasn't messing up the actual shape of it. I am confident that it's still going to fit correctly, like so. Pretty good. And I think I had already decided that the length I'm going for is about here, so I'm going to fold it up where this limey green check is and have just a little row of that visible at the bottom. And this is where it is useful, the fact that I cut the fabric in the way that I did to make sure all the skirt panels were on the same row, because it will mean that all the way around it will be ending with the same colour, which is a nice touch. So I'm just going to fold up the inner lining a little bit, fold down the top layer at that point, and then pin those two layers together all the way around before I start sewing. Okay, done. All of our hems are now nice and neat and sewn, and I can put it back on the chair once again. I've got to say, I'm enjoying the chair mannequin thing. It actually works really well. And now I'm thinking, what other clothing pieces could I make for my furniture? I do still need to do the closures at the back, but the other main thing I need to do is add a collar to this neckline, which I think will be pretty easy to make. One of the reasons why I want to add it is because of this foam backing piece here. From the side, it's currently visible and I want it to not be. So I'm going to start by cutting out some calico and pinning it on and just seeing how I can get it to look. And after a lot of faffing around, I can show you now this finished shape, which goes around the neck into a little pointy collar at the front and a sailor flap at the back. And the plan is to cut this out of 2 pieces of my nice fabric, keep this calico in the center of the collar because I think it's going to add some extra structure to it, which will be helpful. And before I put the front on and sew them together, I wanted to add a little BF on the underside of the collar. So I have cut out some letters in some black felt. I'm just gonna quickly sew those on to here. Okay, that's done. And I only have about half an hour left before I have to go out this evening. So once again, we will not be finishing this project today. I'm going to use the rest of the time that I do have left tonight to see how far I can get on this collar, and then I'll report back in the morning for the next, hopefully, finishing steps. I have returned with all the hope in the world that I am going to finish this project today. The collar is done, and here is how it looks, front and back. It turned out pretty nice. I'm kind of now thinking that I would like to make a little sailor collar for myself as well. And now that that's done, before I sew it on, I just need to move on to putting the fixtures onto the back of the dress. And for this, I'm going to add 2 buttons, attaching the 2 sleeves to the back, and then a strip of Velcro down the back to hold those 2 panels together. I also bought 6 of these little flower-shaped buttons, which I'm going to use where the Velcro is just as decoration. They're not going to be usable buttons. And once those things are done, I will attach my collar, do a few little final stitches around the place to make sure that everything's securely in place, give it an iron, and then I can show you the finished thing and put it back into my bedroom. I cannot tell you how thrilled I am to finally be able to say that this project is finished. I really thought that this was going to be quite a quick and easy project, that I would be able to slip in between bigger things and bash out in a week or so. And look at me now. We are a month, I think, later than the last time I posted a video. I'm seemingly completely incapable of doing anything on this channel in a timely manner, which is becoming a slight issue income-wise. But that aside, I must say I don't regret spending the time on this because I am so pleased with how it's come out. And this might actually be my favourite project that I've ever made on this channel. Of course, I'm happy with the paper mache section of this chair. I managed to fix all of the breakages and also create these lovely feet which just add that little bit of whimsy that I'm always looking to inject into my home. But I think that the real showstopper of this chair has been the cover, and I am very proud of my craftsmanship on this. So without further ado, let's dress up this chair for the final time and get it put away under my dressing table in my bedroom. Thank you so much for watching this video, especially if you've made it this far to my little awkward closing spiel. I'm really excited to now be able to sit on this chair every day while I stare at myself blankly in my mirror. And now that this is done, I can move on to the next project, whatever that's going to end up being. If you enjoyed this video and you're not yet subscribed, I would love it if you did subscribe. I'm really actively trying to grow this channel so that I can convince myself on my bank account that spending weeks making something like this isn't totally pointless. If you've ever made a clothing item for one of your furniture pieces, I would love to hear about it down in the comments, and I would love to hear any of your other thoughts or feedback as well. And with that all said, I think that all that's left to say now is goodbye.